swear you ain't seen nothing yet. So I went down to the water and found my face.
Hey yo, it's the Autistic Dudestic back again. And this week, I wanted to talk about social communication when it comes to autism. The breakdowns that can occur in communication and some tips and tricks to help the process. So let's start at the very basics. The definition of communication is the imparting or exchanging of information, of news. You can communicate with a combination of two types of communication styles. Verbal communication, which is the words you speak, and nonverbal communication, which is things like body gestures or tone. Now, communication takes at least two different parties or more for an active back and forth conversation, unless talking to a brick wall is your type of thing.
It's just myself talking to myself about myself.
So there is an in and an out to the communication hub. The in would be how you perceive the information coming from the other party. The out would be how the other party perceives the information coming from you. A neurodivergent person can oftentimes find it easier to communicate with another neurodivergent person than they would with a neurotypical person. You remember that telephone game that a lot of us played in our childhood? The one where a kid began by whispering a message to another kid, who would in turn relay that message, whispering to another kid, and that process would repeat on and on down the line. Then after the message goes through the whole line, they compare what the first kid said to what was interpreted at the end of the line. The message usually goes way off course from the original statement, and the communication completely breaks down.
You could call the phone company. Maybe they could change the message.
And that, folks, is how it can feel as an autistic person when communicating with an allistic person. You see, you have a point you want to make in your brain, but after it goes through all the autistic filters and maybe even a minion filter that just screams banana, 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 the point the other person receives and interprets could be wildly different than what your brain originally intended. So let's break down the out road of the communication hub first, shall we? The one that relays to the other party how they perceive your message. Well, eye contact would be one giant elephant in the room. You see, to a neurotypical person, eye contact can be a sign of attentive listening and respect.
Eye contact, smile, yeah.
But coming from an autistic brain, it is the opposite of attentive listening. Although some people with autism can hold some level of eye contact, just know that does not exactly equate to listening. A lot of people in the community state if they look at an item around the room that is not moving, that helps them focus on what's being said to them. It gives the autistic person room to process the speech. So a lot of times, an autistic person will force eye contact to make the allistic person feel they are being listened to. See, even when the natural instinct in the brain is to just look away, and you force that eye contact anyways, because you want to show respect and that you're listening, that part is masking. I already did an episode discussing masking. I'll leave a link to it down below in the description. If you want to go check it out after going through this whole video, feel free. So You see, when I'm looking away or looking at a wall or just transfixed on some random object in the room while you are talking away, I am listening. Sure, I might be fidgeting or stimming with something, but that's almost like background music while you're actively writing a paper. It's not taking away from your active goal. And when someone is talking, the active goal is, well, listening.
Friendship is like marriage. The key is listening.
But you know what's also not taking away from the goal? Part of my brain's computing process. One going towards making sure I maintain eye contact, but just the right amount. You know, if you stare, that can be a little bit creepy. So eye contact and show respect, but not too much, so you don't look slightly unhinged. And two, going towards my brain, just trying to overanalyze your nonverbal communication methods that I may not understand, but I'm trying to put some meaning to. While my brain's computing process is going towards those two things, do you know what I'm not really doing well?
Listening.
A medical study conducted back in 2022 studied the brain activity of both neurotypical people and autistic people when maintaining eye contact. The part of your brain that deals with attention was less active in autistic people when maintaining eye contact. Okay, so our lack of eye contact can get misreceived by the other party as something else. What else? Well, a lot of the weaknesses us autistic people tend to have really revolves around the non-verbal communication methods. You know, the read between the lines type stuff. So your facial reaction to things, maybe you'll look like a blank stare with no excitement. But in reality, that blank stare could be just us processing things, when maybe later on we'll show more excitement. Or maybe we're just excited in our heads at that moment, but we're not properly conveying it. Or maybe we're trying to mask, but yet epically failing at trying to make our face do that thing and show the expression that we really feel, but it just comes off wrong or forced. The tone or inflection when conveying our words can maybe not match up to the emotions we want to project. It can be just like the facial expressions. It can come across as flat or emotionless, and we sound monotone and not excited when, in fact, we really are.
It's the wrong tone.
Or maybe it's going back to that masking thing again, and your tone and inflection is just trying to compensate. And maybe you're doing it just a little bit too much. You want a perfect example of tone? Oh, look at a birthday party. Well, not the party exactly, but the gift opening portion of the party specifically. They sit you down at some table and load you up with wrapped gifts all over the table in front of you. As you're opening each one, while, mind you, you're also trying not to go into sensory overload from the mountain of wrapping paper just around you, you must appear both enthusiastic and grateful.
Welcome to the dead house.
All right.
It's a Pikachu and a toothbrush.
Toothbrush.
Oh my God. Is that for Grandma? Let me see.
It has to be practical.
Yeah.
If your tone when talking about that gift becomes flat while you're trying to maintain eye contact with the people that gave it to you, well, you'll look like an ungrateful little shit. So you try to keep up some enthusiastic and appreciative act the whole time, which is such a draining process. Probably why a lot of birthday parties ends in meltdowns. Or maybe it's just mine.
Interesting for adults too. It's wonderful. We're already halfway through the first book.
I've made it this far while talking about the outlane of the communication hub without even talking about the spoken words. I've talked before about the autistic brain and pattern recognition. Now, this pattern recognition may lead you to jumping to conclusions, 3 steps ahead of where the other person might be. And while you're trying to explain that conclusion and how you got there, well, there is room for some more communication breakdown. You'll start going to these different points in your brain, and you'll easily see the connection between all of them. But the other person may not see that link. Then you start looking like Charlie on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, when he's working in the mailroom.
This company is being bled like a stuffed pig, Mac, and I got a paper trail to prove it. Check this out. Take a look at this.
Jesus Christ,
That
Charlie.
right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay? Pepe Sylvia. This name keeps coming up over and over again. Every day, Pepe's mail's getting sent back to me. Pepe Sylvia, Pepe Sylvia. I look in the mail. Well, this whole box is Pepe Sylvia.
So they view it as going on tangents, and they just stop really listening to you or just dismiss it. Another problem with the verbal communication side is something I like to call the shared memory fallacy. Now, with the shared memory fallacy, our autistic brain can assume the other person is already aware of, or at least should be aware of, certain information. So we may not fully explain it or leave out chunks of what's in our heads because we just think you already know. Or maybe to ourselves, it may be redundant to just go over it all again. And for some reason, we believe that that other person has all the information that we have, even when they really don't. And that sometimes can convolute the situation. So take an office work example. Say an autistic person made a mistake on an order form and input the numbers just incorrectly. That coworker of yours is discussing the situation with you. So for you, you take the conversation, and with word association, you remember a time you messed up the order in the location box, but not the number box. So you say something along the lines of, oh, at least the error was made in that certain box and not the location box. And then say you just walk away from the situation. In your mind, that's a funny joke because the location error you caused 2 months earlier sent the order to Portland, Oregon, and not Portland, Maine. However, that comment came from a place you believe that coworker has all the information that you have, but they don't. And now they are, 1, questioning why you would say that, and 2, maybe they just start panicking. Because what if you caught something they didn't? And there was a second mistake that they made. Both options are not fun for that other person. That, folks, is the shared memory fallacy. It really is an innocent way of, oh, I remember this incredibly small detail about something 2 months ago. Let me speak to it. And thinking that the other person's brain just will pick up on it.
Brain was getting in the way.
And the shared memory fallacy can also present in ways like quoting a line from a movie or a TV show, while just dropping it out there with no buildup or without acknowledging the source, this channel would never fall to such debauchery.
Do you ever not quote a movie?
No.
Okay, so we spent some time talking about the outroad of the communication hub. Now let's go back to the inroad. The side that deals with how the autistic person interprets the information they're receiving from that other person. Autistic people socialize based on their perceptions of the environment and situation, not based on feelings and emotional cues. Basically, through their pattern recognition, they are gauging the social interaction and how it's going or where it's going. And you see a lot of the problems I talked about in the outroad also apply to the inroad because, well, we just don't understand them. Your tone, your posture, your eye contact, your sarcasm. We may not pick up on it. Or we may not know it's happening. And even if we know it's happening, we may not know why it's happening or if it's really sincere. Sure, we can maybe copy and mimic some of these things we pick up on over time. But just copying something and actually understanding something are two totally different things. Shout out to the kid I sat next to in Spanish in high school.
I don't know Spanish.
So we can mimic things that neurotypicals do in conversations, but that doesn't mean that those conversations will go well. Now, what I want you to imagine is sitting at a fancy dinner party with many plates being set out in front of you and also being taken away from by the waitstaff.
Shrek.
Yeah? Oh, sorry. Great soup, Mrs. Q. Mmm.
No, darling.
Oh! Yeah.
So imagine each dish as a topic of conversation. So the neurotypical person wants to start the conversation up with a certain topic, the opening appetizer dish. They may feel like this is a safe topic to start with. The mozzarella sticks with the fancy leaves garnered all around it. This small talk can be boring. And oftentimes, us autistic people just aren't passionate about small topics, I guess is the best way to describe it. We'd rather get to the meat of it all and bypass all those fancy appetizers. But we try hard to stay on topic with each course being served as to that's what the other autistic person likes. Each small plate is a simple topic, nothing too deep, probably a safe topic in their mind. In our minds, a boring one. In an autistic person's brain, they want to get to the main course or main courses, the deep conversations. We like to talk about the why and the how of the situations, not just the pretty leaves that are next to my mozzarella stick. Give me that turkey leg.
Turkey leg.
So this could lead to abrupt changes from one topic to the next. That could be jarring or maybe even a little bit upsetting to the neurotypical person, and it might just leave them lost. So the more our inroad of the communication hub gets influxes with those fancy leaves of meaningless banter, the more likely we are to just get bored and we just zone out of the conversation altogether.
They made us eat leaves.
So unbeknownst to the autistic person, the neurotypical person wanted to have small talks to get into the bigger dishes, build into the deep conversation. The best way I can understand it is getting acclimated to that hot tub water, one step at a time until you're fully ready to submerge. Me though, I'm ready to just cannonball right in. So without understanding on how others like to approach conversations, it's hard to grasp the why of the conversations we're having. And even further understanding the other person's feelings and emotions to have those conversations. To further this point of struggling to understand feelings, well, let's look at the feeling of pain just for a second. You miss a step going downstairs, and you end up tumbling down the whole flight of stairs. Someone drives you to the emergency room, and then you get wheeled in on that little wheelchair they bring you out to, and the nurse comes up and asks you, "What's your pain level on a scale of 1 to 10? Well, what do numbers have to do with pain? Okay, so 1 is the lowest number, which means it's just slightly painful, enough to notice, but it's not really that big of a deal. Well, that's the starting point and a little bit easier to gauge. Now, what's at the other end? The 10, the highest number. What's the most pain you can feel? Death or near death? Like you've been impaled by a katana in a sword fight for your life? Okay, so somewhere between a gnawing bug bite and death by katana. What's a 7 then? An MMA guy just snapping my arm in a submission? To this day, I'm really unsure of what those numbers even mean. I can tell you about when I missed a step going down a flight of stairs. Although I didn't tumble down it, I just tried to jump forward and miss the last 3 steps. I came down and I rolled on my ankle, and I heard a really loud just pop. My foot swelled up faster than that girl who ate that blueberry gum in Willy Wonka's factory.
Blueberry pie and cream. It's the most marvelous blueberry pie I've ever tasted.
Now, I can run through that whole scenario logically and what happened. I can even say it really hurt. But what I can't say is how much it hurt. What number should I give it? Should it be below the MMA guy just snapping my arm? I'm not sure what that feels like. It's never happened to me before.
How can she not be sure how she feels?
Hey, so I want to cut in here before this next part. I want to say that autism is a spectrum, and everyone on the spectrum has their own needs and abilities. I make these videos and try to give advice from someone that is on the spectrum that can verbalize my thoughts and feelings. And I want to guide others to help them in their journeys in the way I needed help in mine years ago. But I also want to acknowledge that there are people on this spectrum that are nonverbal or that struggle to communicate. And I never want them to watch my videos and feel I did not make a safe space for them. I want everyone to feel welcome to watch and enjoy my videos. And I never want anyone to feel left out for the advice that I give. The main message I want people to understand when watching my videos is take the advice that you feel called to or comfortable with and just leave the rest. I'm still working on my communication skills every day. And well, I get it wrong a lot. Hence this cut in. But I want a space to have people come and discuss autism and feel comfortable and learn all about this diagnosis. So, this next part, if you feel like the tips will help you, great. And if not, that's okay too. I just appreciate that you're watching and enjoying my videos. So, I hope that you keep coming back also, and maybe different advice down the line will be for you. Okay, So we covered a lot about the communication breakdown that can happen due to an autistic person's brain. What are some tools and tips to help the communication process go smoother? How can one socialize while being openly autistic? Number one, the most important part is using your body as a guide. Be aware of your own behaviors, needs, and limitations, while at the same time be prepared to advocate for those needs that you have. If you know that you have high light sensitivity, try to pick a space with low lighting. If you have an elevated sound sensitivity, try to pick a quiet area. Most importantly, express those needs to the other person so that you're both on the same page. If you notice your fidgeting or stimming is starting to just amp up, or if you start to gain that feeling of anxiety just arise within you, take a mental note of that and try to be self-aware. Try to recognize what you're worrying about and try to rectify that. Whether it's adjusting your surroundings or just having to communicate and ask questions to gain clarity around something you're not understanding fully.
Skynet has become self-aware.
Which leads to point number 2. Don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions. You may be keenly aware of a situation that is ongoing or developing, but you may not understand the why in the situation, and you get hung up on it. Why is this situation going down the way it is? Why is this person saying these things? What is their motive? Don't just try to shove these concerns down in your brain, trying to mask it and just act like you're not actually anxious and everything's just, peachy. It's not going to help you feel more comfortable in the situation, and it's going to project a false reality to that other person or persons you're communicating with. So ask the question. And it does not have to be necessarily a question either. It can be a statement. If something is bothering you or making you uncomfortable, say the thing. Stay on the same page with other people. And most importantly, protect your comfort.
You intend to advocate for yourself.
Number 3, utilize alternate forms of contact. While, of course, for certain subjects, a back and forth verbal conversation in real time can be needed to talk through certain topics, but this does not need to be the only way we talk through something. Depending on the situation, other methods could be used to help create better communication. Or those methods could even be used in conjunction with the traditional back and forth conversation. I found writing down my thoughts I want to communicate helps me better actively convey my thoughts and feelings to that other person. My brain isn't overtaken by just trying to read the conversation and just focused on my thoughts. It's also able to process as I go, and I can go at my own pace. If it comes out wrong and I need to filter it better or reword it, no problem. There's always backspace. You see, in a face-to-face conversation, there is no redo button. Sure, you can try to re-explain or attempt to just backtrack. But once that weird thing comes out of your mouth, there's no putting that monkey back in its cage again. So writing it down can allow me the time to process and really formulate your thoughts into producing the best and most conveying communication you are able to. Now, remember, the situation will also somewhat dictate the method you actually use. If what you're trying to convey is short and to the point, like a couple sentences, then a text message would be an effective form of communication. If the point you're trying to convey requires a bit more context and explanation, and it's going to look like a short story block of text, maybe an email would be a better mode of the communication transportation. When someone just opens the text message in the moment, when they could be a little bit busy, they could be maybe feel a little bit overwhelmed by the long, short story just staring back at them. Knowing they don't have the time to respond, they just exit out thinking, hey, they'll get back to it later. But life happens and they get occupied with other things. And maybe they don't come back to it or respond for a bit. And that's okay too, because after all, we're all humans living in our own bubble, worrying about our own details. And other humans are not just sitting around and waiting to give us some immediate feedback.
We're here to respond when needed.
So maybe after sending that lengthy email, maybe just follow up with the person with a short text and acknowledge the email that you sent. And pre-warn them a little bit before they open it and until they have time to properly delve into it and give it the time it needs. Also, back to when the situation really calls for a face-to-face, to properly work through the topic and with the other party in real time. You can also prepare yourself by writing out your thoughts and what you would like to convey in an email. Send that email and have them read it so they can go through and understand the thoughts you're trying to convey. Then let them know after reading it, you're open to a face-to-face conversation to expand on what you wrote and have the ability to also answer that other person's questions.
I'm prepared to discuss it.
Also, there is one other form of communication I'd really like to encourage. Emojis. Well, this system takes a little bit of preparation before implementation. This helps in those moments when maybe speaking can be just a bit overwhelming. Whether it's just talking aloud or even maybe just texting. Maybe your personal life is just overwhelming and you need time to yourself. Maybe you're feeling depressed and you don't want to really explain everything, but you just want comfort from that other party. If you set up with the people close to you an emoji that is attached to those specific emotions, then you can just send it with no further explanation because both of you are already aware of what that emoji really means.
Apple emoji, orange emoji, grapes emoji.
And number 4, handling misunderstandings. Now with communication, you must understand. Communication breakdowns and misunderstandings will be inevitable. So as much as you and the other party may try to implement better communication strategies, life can happen and miscommunications can happen. So what happens when you reach that point and the communication just completely breaks down? Well, first off, take a deep breath and try to regulate any of the emotions that are being heightened because of all this. Maybe the anger over being misconstrued and misunderstood, or anxiety that the situation is just going off the rails. Whatever emotion it is, be aware of it and address that within yourselves and try to regulate it. Once you have that state of somewhat calm, now you can start to understand the situation. It can still be worked through, cleared up, and resolved. So maybe go back through some of the points you made and compare one end of the telephone game to the other. See what points you were trying to make and see what points the other party just came to. Try to re-examine that whole process. Where they were following along that bouncing ball and where they just took a left turn into that forest. And address those points where the communication broke down and try to clarify what you meant. If you're having a hard time properly understanding them and you misunderstood what they said, try to ask more questions to gather more information so you can learn more and you can try to find the points that need to be expanded on more for your understanding and theirs.
Take a breath and take us through everything.
Having great communication and having autism, it can oftentimes be a struggle and a paradox. But there are supports and methods to improving it if you're willing to work on it. Thank you, friends, for sitting through this discussion today. I appreciate you all. So please like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. It means the world to me, and it will help this channel grow to reach more people. I know I'm starting this thing off small, and hopefully it will just snowball into something huge and majestic. And if you got any great tips for helping improve the communication superhighway, drop them down below in the comments. I would love to hear from you all. And please join me next week when I talk about autistic meltdowns and how you can help reduce the shockwave that they cause. So until next time, same dude time, same dude channel. Autistic Dudestic, signing off.